Uh-oh. Well, it's telling me that there's an error. Okay, we are now live. Oh, we love technology. Hey, everybody, it's Cathy Alessandra, your Yes I Can coach. And I am here this week with another episode of Coffee Talk with Cathy. And while I have the coffee and the hot chocolate that has protein powder in it, and of course the water, especially as I'm talking to my health coach, very excited to be here with you today and join along with Corry, who's actually streaming in from the East Coast. Before we get started, you can find this stream and the recordings on my Facebook page, on my LinkedIn profile, and also on YouTube. So we hope you join us each week. And when we interview inspiring women, and if you know an inspiring woman who needs to be interviewed and share her brilliance with the other Yes I Can women in the community, let me know and we will connect. So today we have Corry Matthews, who, like I said, she happens to be streaming in from the East Coast. But she has been a health coach for me and for many. She's got a great story to share. She's really focused in on hormones, and don't we know about that in the whole menopause thing? If you're a woman and you're in that age category, right? So I titled today "Health, Hormones, and Happiness" because they are all combined. So, Corry, welcome. I'm excited to have you here today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't you just take a moment to share with our viewers who you are and what you do before we kind of jump into the rest of this.
Okay. My name is Corry, and I have been in the health and wellness industry since literally the second I got out of college. I knew in college that I wanted to focus on stuff with exercise and nutrition. I had an amazing anatomy teacher when I was in high school that just helped me fall in love with how the body works and how it moves and, how nutrition affects it. And so over the last few years, I've worked with Marines, I've worked with prenatal, postpartum. I've worked with fitness competitors. I competed on the professional circuit as a bodybuilder. So that's why I'm on the East Coast today, is we've got a big bodybuilding event that we put on 3 times a year. But when I found myself hitting my 40s, I found that everything that I had ever done before no longer worked. So it was the, cutting back on the calories, focusing on the macros, even any of the exercise that I had tried before. And the more I started reaching out to friends, they felt the same way. And I really felt like, I started looking online and finding out more information, and in all the stuff that I had gone through with all of my nutrition training and background. And, I've got a bachelor's in exercise phys, a master in sports medicine. I can't even tell you how many certifications, but there wasn't so much focusing on, when women hit 40, what happens? And I remember going to my doctor and saying, I'm 40, something's off. Can you test my hormones? And them coming back and saying, everything's normal. Like, you're normal. You're just, and it's the phrase that we all hate. You're just getting older. Like, this is what happens. And I was just so frustrated. And I said, well, this isn't fair. And I found myself as a health professional being 20 pounds overweight and doing all the right things, and it just wasn't working. And so I started diving more into hormones. And my business partner and I, she has her PhD in holistic health and hypnosis, started looking at how can hormones be affecting what's going on. And the more we started diving into it, we found that there was really a connection between hormones, what we eat. And so I primarily now focus on women and finding hormonal balance to help them lose weight and keep the weight off. And so it's just been, and when I say that, I focus on the metabolism hormones, because I can't really, it's hard for estrogen or progesterone, as I like to refer to them, as the sex hormones. But throughout all of the last 5 years of doing all this research, we found that if estrogen and progesterone are too high, too low, completely bottom out, if your metabolism hormones are, and this is the key, optimal, then life is so much better, and you can navigate those ups and downs of hot flashes and brain fog and all those lovely, symptoms that we get, that sometimes you go to your doctor and you want them fixed and they're like, you're normal. There's nothing we can do about it. So,
it's crazy. So some of the viewers may know I dropped 70 pounds just before I turned 50, 48 and 49, right? And it was easier, right? And then it started building up, and it just, and then you tack on COVID as well, but it's so much harder. And then it's that belly, it's the hormone thing. And so I started working with you a couple of years ago. Gosh, has it really been that long? I guess it has. Really looking at that hormone piece, because I think it is so important as a woman who's about to turn 58 and in full blown menopause now. it makes a difference. And of course, in how you feel. So share a little bit about maybe a tip or two with the listeners and the viewers. How would you change that? What's like an easy thing that you can do, or a little bit about, I mean, I know you even do a 30-day challenge kind of thing. Share a little bit about that with us.
So I always tell people that there's no secret to it. Like what I do to balance hormones is there are really three specific things. And if you do these three things, like it will, every single woman that I tell them to do these three things, it works. But when I tell you these three things, everybody's going to be like, yeah, but giving those up is so impossible. So it's giving up your alcohol, it's giving up the sugar, and it's giving up grains, and not just wheat. The problem is when people think grains, they think, oh, I'm going to go gluten free. But, so many times when people go gluten free, they switch over to corn. And corn is, as I like to say, without, putting too bad of a bad word, but it's the most bastardized kind of grain that we have in the US. It is mass produced, it's the most genetically modified because, most of the corn is used to feed livestock. But when we put that into our diet, again, it's genetically modified. And everybody thinks corn is a vegetable. And I always tell people, no, it's either a fruit or a grain. It is not a vegetable. But those are really it. You've got to drop the alcohol, especially if you're finding, in your midsection, you've got brain fog, hot flashes too. A lot of people don't realize that, the alcohol can lead to the hot flashes. I get it at the end of the night when everything is like, oh my gosh, I can't handle it one more moment. That can be the case. But it's those three. It's alcohol, it's sugar, it's grains. And so in the programs that we've developed, we help women figure out how to successfully remove those and then also find out maybe one of those isn't the issue. Maybe it's just one of them, or maybe it's all of them. So figuring that out and then sticking with it really does make a difference.
Yeah. I think people don't understand how much sugar there is in everything, right? When you really start looking at a label, how there is sugar in everything. And I think, manufacturers and I mean, looking at, and I know if you follow Corry on Facebook or Instagram, she's always giving tips and ideas. And she did a Costco thing the other day that had a whole bunch of things that you could, do easily. But I think really looking at that, I know for me, sugar is a huge trigger, on what I'm doing. And so really having to take control of that. But yeah, so I mean, sugar can be a big one, and looking at the labels and checking things out. So as a business owner, you've been a business owner for a lot of years as well. What have you found to be some of the challenges, or maybe your biggest challenge as a business owner, and how did you overcome that?
Well, I think the biggest I had was I owned brick and mortar nutrition stores. So years ago, I owned brick and mortar nutrition stores. They were here in the East Coast. And then back in 2017, I moved to California. My husband grew up in California, so he always wanted to move our family back there. But so I owned those stores and they never, I owned it. So I opened the store in 2007. The first kind of recession hit us in like 2008. So opening a business store kind of in that time was not the best time to open it. But while I was passionate about it, while I had fun, and it was something that I loved with connecting with customers, it never really got to the point where it was profitable. It was always just kind of break even. It was never profitable. And, my background is in exercise and nutrition. It is not in business. So, having the passion behind helping clients with nutrition didn't necessarily translate well to, your inventory and payroll and, marketing and all those expenses that went with it. And so back in, I got really lucky in 2019. We closed the second of our two stores. So the first store closed in 2018. So meanwhile, I had moved to California already. I had these stores still operating here in Virginia, and I was trying to figure out, how to make all that work. In 2019, December of 2019, I was actually negotiated with the landlord to close the second of the stores. And, we still had 4 years on a lease. We still had, an SBA loan on it. And I was like, I don't know how to do this. But when my husband and I looked at all of it, we realized in the long run, it made more sense to just get out. I think it was divine intervention because of the fact that COVID hit.
Clearly.
Went out of business, and I don't know how we would have maintained it when COVID hit because, it was a nutrition store. It wasn't something that had to stay open or anything like that. But in that process, those stores closing, and we walked away with an SBA loan we still had to pay and, $40,000 of personal debt that, honestly, to this day, I'm still paying off that debt. And it made me feel like an ultimate failure in business. It really made me feel like, I wasn't good enough in what I did. And there was, just I wasn't successful. And that really was something really hard for me to overcome. And, it was a good friend of mine once that, had said to me, businesses fail. They fail all the time, and it's not a personal failure. The business failed. You didn't fail as a person. And so that was really important for me to take going forward. And so, I learned from that. I never want to own a brick and mortar store. I never want to own a business. I mean, every now and then I drive by and I see the businesses, or I walk into a business and I'm like, I know the pain of running a small business and what it takes to run it, but I don't ever want to do that again. But for me, for years, that was so hard, and there's days even now where it's like, I'll feel this like fear come up inside of me and like, you failed at this, you're not good enough. And I have to just push it back down and go, no, I am. But that was the biggest challenge and the biggest hurdle, and through COVID, and we got lucky because during COVID the SBA helped with relief and payments, so that saved my butt because I didn't, when COVID hit, I was like, how am I going to pay $1,800 in an SBA loan every single month? And nobody's focusing on health coaching right now, right? They're just trying to make it through the day to day. But I managed to make through and, reinvented myself in terms of my business structure, because it was always, my passion was still ultimately always helping people. Because at the end of the day, when somebody overcomes a health challenge, and number one is always weight loss, but when somebody's holding on to excess weight and they don't feel confident or they don't feel like they can move forward, it's amazing to see what happens to people when they kind of bust through that and they finally get to that place where they feel good. And so I always knew that was my core. That's where I wanted to be. So I just had to keep going and pushing through. And, I say, never again will I have employees.
Oh, the difficult lessons that we learn, huh? They can be painful
Yep.
lessons. But I like also what you said about you were kind of staying in your lane of brilliance, right? Everybody's got that area of brilliance, and you had it in the health industry, right? But not necessarily running the business. And
Mhm.
so, bringing others in, having, I mean, it's just such a staying in our lane and being in that place, and then looking at, even now, is it, where is that area of brilliance? Who can you bring in to help? Who can you, what should you be letting go? Closing the store, and oh my gosh, divine intervention indeed, just before December of 2019. I didn't realize it was right there. So one last question before we kind of end it up and give people information how to connect with you. So now that you went through all of that, how do you define success?
I would say at the end of the day, it's about, for me, are my clients getting successes? Are they, finding the solutions that they need to live a better life and a healthier and happier life? And I think too, it's every now and then. Just recently I was struggling. I'm 45 and I am in full blown perimenopause. So, there's days where, I'm talking to my clients and I'm just like, I was even just having this conversation with Stacia this morning. And I said, some days I feel like I'm this failure, like I'm this imposter, like it's not, because I'm suffering through perimenopause and all the tips I do, it's not necessarily, where it needs to be. But yet when I get my hormone levels tested, my doctor's like, you are in the thick of the thick of the thick of it. And they've just said, if you weren't doing everything that you're teaching your clients, you wouldn't be where you are today. Like you would probably be 20 pounds heavier. I come from a family with a lot of really scary health risks in terms of heart disease and diabetes. And, my grandmother suffered a stroke. And so I remind myself that, and I'm my hardest critic. So when I look at myself, I feel fluffy and gross and, just frumpy and old, because you look back to where you're 20 or you think about that. But I realize that, giving myself grace, like I give everybody else grace, and just keep going and keep pushing through. And, we've got to live our best life, because one thing I'll tell everyone, if you find yourself in this hormonal mess cocktail soup that I, talk about, this is when we suffer the most from stress. So if you are stressing your body out, so cortisol is a hormone that directly affects all your other hormones. And science shows that women through the ages of 35 to 60 are the most affected by stress in terms of their physical appearance, their body, all of the bodily functions going on. So it's just really finding every day, how do I give myself that grace to keep going. Little did I know when I named my company back in 2006, Strength and Grace, how important it would be throughout the years in terms of what I do. But, I just tell women, give yourself the grace, to keep going, to do the very best that you can. And when my clients reach out and say, I'm not waking up in the middle of the night sweating to death, or I, dropped some weight, or, everybody keeps telling me how great my face looks, those are letting me know that what I'm doing is really making an impact and making women feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Serving us women who are going through kind of a crazy time. I don't know why menopause hits when the kids are in high school. And there's just so many things that are going on. Okay. So as I mentioned in the beginning of this, that she's got following her on Instagram and Facebook. I mean, she's constantly giving ideas and tips and shopping lists and recipes and all that. So Corry, where would somebody go to find you on social or follow you on your website or whatever?
So the website is strengthandgracefitness.com. But I do all the tips and stuff that I'm sharing is on either Instagram or Facebook. So Instagram, it's just Corry Matthews. I always tell people, as long as you can spell my name right, you'll find me. So it's CORRYMATT. So 2 R's, 2 T's, Corry Matthews. And then Facebook is just Corry Matthews, same way. But it's got all the information there. And then of course, I have a link in my bio there that has, if you're thinking maybe it's your hormones, there's a free hormone quiz there that you can take and see which of the hormones might be the ones that are out of, most people are going to go to that one and see it's insulin, which is sugar.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So my final question that I ask all of my interviewees, what makes you a yes, I can woman?
That I just keep going, that I keep figuring it out and keep moving forward. I figure that if I am teaching others, that is the best practice for me. I learned when I was helping competitors get ready for the bodybuilding stage, they have to do posing in a certain way. When I taught them how to pose, I got better myself. So teaching women all these skills to feel better, it helps me feel better. And so it's just, when the going gets tough, I just keep going and I find better ways to do it. And so that's me living a yes, I can life. And I went hiking the other day with my 75-year-old aunt. She kept up with me. She kept going. And I just looked at her and I said, that's what I want to be. When I'm 75, I want to be hiking. And she goes on these amazing trips. And I want to say, yes, I can do that because I've kept myself physically fit and I can live my best life.
Yeah, I love that. Corry, thank you so much for joining me all the way from Virginia, not down the street as you usually are. And thank you for your vulnerability. I appreciate you sharing this idea that you're struggling through the same hormone pieces that many of the women that you're serving are. And also just even the business transparency and, what we're doing and how we do have failures, but it's not failure. It's really just a lesson that we're learning and taking with us.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much for you, our viewers watching us today. We'll be back next week with another episode of Coffee Talk with Cathy. Until then, I hope you have a great day and live your best Yes, I Can life. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.